The Horry County Solid Waste Authority Budget Workshop, March 13th, 2017 at 10:30. And call this meeting to order. The invocation will be by Mr. Michael Hughes, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be by Mr. Mike Campbell.
Okay, we'll take just a minute and pray. Father, we'd like to thank you for all that you have done and what you continue to do for us. We ask that you remember our board member who is sick. We ask that you remember the staff and the rest of the board members. We ask that you go with us during this deliberation to help us make the best decisions we can for those citizens of Horry County. And all these blessings we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Let's face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We need approval of the agenda.
I make a motion that we approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The agenda's been approved, so we will start with our FY 19 and 20 budget discussion. Mr. Knight?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we did yesterday, we hope we have questions. Hope we can answer them. Anything that we need to add to the budget or delete, that's what we're here for. And we'll turn it over to Jan and let her run with it.
Good morning.
Morning.
So you're doing this in the afternoon. Yeah, we're going to begin, like I said, going over our operating budget. Just to kind of give you a brief overview of where we've started and where we've come to. According to our regulations, we prepare annually a 2-year operating budget and a 5-year capital budget. We started back in December timeframe. I send out information to the staff for them to prepare what we begin with is our capital budget, putting together any capital expenditures that they need or foresee that they need for the next 5 years. And then in January, I send out all kinds of good information for them to start preparing their operating budget. And so what we're going to start with this morning, of course, I'm going to begin on page 1, starting with our operating budget. As you can see on page 1, this is actually our summary of revenues. And I'm just going to briefly kind of go through each line item, and then I'll kind of get into a little bit more detail. To begin with, our first revenue line item is our tipping fees. As you can see, we've got about a 13% increase from FY18 to FY19 in our tipping fees revenue. I'll go into a little more detail with those on the next page when we get to that. But you can see that we went from $12,158,410 to $13,790,500. And that, like I said, that's a 13% increase. Our recyclable material sales, as you can see, that's a 10% increase from FY18 to FY19. And like I said, we do anticipate some increase in the prices as well as the tonnage. We still have the Charleston contract for at least 3/4 of next year we anticipate, which is why we're only seeing about a $500,000 increase, because we did take into consideration that we anticipate that contract ending in about April of next year. So at that point, we will see, of course, significant decrease in the incoming tonnage. Our interest earnings, as you can see, we've got about a 16% increase. We have been getting a better rate of return. They're doing a wonderful job going through and looking at different things, trying new investments. Included in your packet was a summary that I received from Horry County on the investments for you to take a look at and review. So like I said, where we kind of anticipate those going. But they're doing an excellent job to continue, and we really enjoyed having Ms. Jones come from the county and give us updates on those. Our waste tire rebate, of course, that's the money that we receive from the state. That money actually, I hate to say kind of a wash through, but it helps cover the cost of disposing of the waste tires. That cost continues to go up every year on disposing of the tires. So with that and some grant money that we get, it usually covers most of the cost of disposing of the waste tires. But like I said, I don't have any increase in there for next year because, like I said, we had just enough to cover our costs last year, and I anticipate this being enough to cover as well. And like I said, and this is the money that we get from the state. It's like a 2% that they collect whenever you go out and buy new tires. You always pay a disposal fee, and we get a percentage of that back. The state, I don't know the rhyme or reason how they return that to us each year, but it's just a percentage that we're allotted each year. The miscellaneous container rental, that is the containers that we actually put out at the different locations throughout the unincorporated areas for the cardboard collection program. We don't actually charge them for the service. We're actually just renting the container. You know, they pay a small nominal fee. I think they pay a quarter, about $90 a quarter for the rental of the container, but we don't charge them to come and pick it up. They can have it picked up as many times they want a week. And like I said, we don't charge them for that. But we have seen a slight increase, and like as you can see, I did budget a 2% increase in that rental for next year because we have seen a few more containers going out. Our recycling coordinators are doing a great job getting out there and promoting this program. So like I said, luckily we are seeing a little bit more use of that, which is great. Our landfill gas revenue, as you can see, I've got a 25% increase this year. We did a landfill gas expansion, and I'm hoping that, you know, maybe this will even exceed what I have budgeted here, because with that expansion, not really sure at this time, but just in what we've seen so far, we have seen an increase in that. And like I said, and I'm sure when Stephanie gets to her budget, she'll be able to maybe tell you a little bit more about how that, hopefully, we'll see some more increase in those revenues next year. The C&D recycling revenue, we've actually got a 53% increase. Like I said, we're starting to take a little bit more material over there. We're starting to sell some of the material, so we're hoping to continue that. As you know, we also had, we're going to add an additional $5 to the recycling incentive to take the material over there. So we're also hoping that with that incentive increasing, hopefully that'll encourage people to take more and more material over to that facility. So we are anticipating about a 53% increase in that revenue for next year. The e-waste processing fee, that is up about 8%, like you said, about $50,000, and that is just a pass-through. Like I said, we collect over at our MRF for the e-waste that comes in through the municipalities, and we end up having to pay right at about $700,000 to send it out. There is a small fee built in there, a processing fee that we do charge that we do maintain, but the majority of this money will go right back out to getting the material removed from our MRF. And then, of course, we have our store next door, which continues to do a great job in reselling the material that's taken over there. And like I said, they have, you know, stayed right around this $80,000 in their revenue each year, which is quite a bit for that little store over there. But they do a very good job of getting the material out and making a profit each year, which is great. Like I said, we continue to work with Council on Aging with that program, and like I said, it's been very useful and very worthwhile. It's keeping the material out of the landfill and like I said, and helping all the way around, for sure. So, any questions here before I go into a little more detail about the tipping fees? All right, on page 2, this is kind of a breakdown of the tipping fees. And normally what I do when I go through and I try to anticipate where I think we'll be is the main thing I try to look at is the tonnage, where I think our tonnage will be for next year. We're right on the mark for our solid waste tonnage. And when I do my analysis, I always look at last year, first half of last year versus the last half of last year, and where we are so far the first half of this year. I have an analysis I go through, and I anticipate us this year hitting right on the mark. I have not seen a lot of increase, so I did not increase our solid waste tonnage for next year. As you can see, like I said, it's just a break even. I think we'll have around the same amount of tonnage next year. Our solid waste incentive, that's the incentive that we actually are doing away with this year. That's where we're going to take a portion of that money and we're going to reinvest it into our C&D recycling incentive, and also we're setting up that recycling grant, and I'll show that to you later as well. The other big change that you'll see, of course, is in mixed construction. Last year, we had budgeted for 63,000 tons because we had anticipated losing a large percentage of our C&D material to outside facilities. We have not this year. We've been very fortunate, and so as you can see, that's got a tremendous increase, about a 75% increase in our tonnage. And so that is where the largest portion of the increase, of course, in our tipping fee revenue is coming, is from the C&D from the C&D material. I've got the tonnage going from 63,000 to 110,000, which increases the revenue quite a bit. As you can see on down, just to kind of point out in case you see the clean wood, you'll see a tremendous decrease there. That's because we used to take clean wood into the landfill itself, and we're not anymore. We're recycling that material. It's now included in our C&D recycling tonnage. It goes over to the factory, and it gets sorted, and that's the clean wood that we're actually using to make our colored mulch. So we are, like I said, we're using that. So that's why you'll see a tremendous decrease in that tonnage there. Are there any questions on the tipping fees? Okay. Wanted to turn page to page 3, which is our summary of expenditures. And I'm not going to get into too many of the line items here because, like I said, we're going to go through division by division and go through our line item budgets with you. But I just wanted to point out 2 line items for under the non-departmental. As you can see, we have a transfer to designated funds. We have a couple of areas in our designated funds that are starting to get lower. Our construction and development account being one, which is just our general construction and development account. We don't allocate any funds to that account, and that's the account that we use to build on some of the infrastructure here at the landfill. And as we get into the capital budget, I'll show you where we've got some line items in there that are quite large that need to be taken care of. So this year, we've designated to transfer some funds into those accounts to help build those accounts back up so that we can do some of the construction endeavors that need to be taking place around here at the landfill. And then, of course, right below that is the recycling grant. That's where at the last Finance Committee meeting, and the board approved that recycling grant to use a portion of the MSW incentive funds, and that's where that recycling grant will be. Okay, over on page 4. This is just a summary of our expenditures. And what I do with this spreadsheet is I take last year versus this year, and you can see any percent of increase or decrease in the budget. As you can see, personnel services in just about every area except the disposal division has an increase. That also covers any increases in health insurance, retirement, workers' comp. When we prepare our budget each year, we do include an increase automatically, about a 20% increase in our health insurance and our workers' comp, because like I said, it's still unknown exactly where we'll end up, what kind of increases we may see. Of course, our retirement, also the employer's portion of retirement, is going up again this year, so we have that built into this as well. And then, of course, our STEP plan is built into this, as well as the proposed changes that we presented to you yesterday are also built into all those personnel costs that you see. But like I said, we'll go through these line item by line item. As you can see, the majority of us, each division stayed well within, slight increases and slight decreases that you will see as we go through this. Over on page 6. This is our budgeted personnel. We only had probably two major changes that we had within our personnel. We did add one position, which is a trades worker 2. That was under our household hazardous waste program. If you remember during the year, this past year, we added a personnel that would work Tuesday through Saturday collecting the paint, so we did add a position there. And then under the unfunded positions, as you'll see, the Director of Operations and Planning, that position is unfunded this year. And that, of course, is Mr. Hilling's position. So that's the only changes in our budgeted personnel.
You're out of a job.
Yeah.
You're out of a job.
He said.
I guess I'm working for free, right?
If you come back in July, you are free. That's right. Okay, I'm going to begin with the departmental summary for the admin and finance divisions, and I'm going to begin on page 9. And the first department I'm going over is the Board of Directors. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of just hit those line items that increased or decreased, substantially, from FY18 to FY19. As you can see, training and certification was increased from 8,000 to 14,700. And that has to do with the travel for the board. These conferences and some of the different seminars that you're attending, they've increased in cost. Not only being able to try to get there, but the cost of the registration, different things are getting quite costly. So we increased the budget there, as well as below under the travel and lodging. As you'll see, it increased from 12,000 to 29,750. And there again, it's just to cover the cost of the seminars and conferences. Okay, under the administration department, which on page 14, Well, no, I'm sorry, we're gonna start with page, 14, I'm sorry. There was, under consulting and miscellaneous, you'll see a significant increase there of about $50,000, and that's for the waste study. We had mentioned that we would have a waste study done again this year, and so we did increase the budget for in consulting and miscellaneous to, for that waste study to be completed this year. On page 15, building maintenance and repair also has a significant increase, about $30,000. There's some repairs to the building, to the admin building here. The countertops in our bathrooms, in our kitchen are starting to kind of come apart. Dennis has been great to go through and try to glue those back together, but we've seen that some of those are gonna have to be fixed and replaced. The doors on the buildings, the facings need to be scraped and repainted and some of those kind of things. Just some general maintenance that we've not been able to do, excuse me, that we've budgeted to try to do for next year. We need to keep this building up and maintained.
No upgrades anticipated.
So, I'm sorry?
No upgrades.
No, sir. No, sir. Just minor repairs and cleanup that needs to be maintained on the building. Oh, that's right. Yeah, the lighting, like I said, you can, in case you've been through the building lately, you'll see that we've changed out a lot of the lighting in here. We're trying to change all the lights to the LED lights, and Dennis has done a great job of going through and doing that, and we're doing that all ourselves. Like I said, he went through and he's changed, I think, most of them now. You know, as you can see, the overhead lights here have all been changed. In our offices, they've all been changed, and so, like I said, we're trying to do that now to kind of upgrade and maintain a little at a time. All right, and under department, the finance department, on page 20, we had a small increase, of course, in office supplies. We have to purchase statements and tickets from our software vendor, and so that cost has gone up a little bit. So we did increase the budget there for that. And then on page 21, under merchant fees, we were actually able to decrease the merchant fees by right at around $5,000. Like I said, we were able to, like I said, decrease that. We've been very fortunate in the number of credit card fees and stuff that we're actually having to assess has gone down. Like I said, less people using the credit card. Like I said, we've got more people setting up accounts. So that's been very fortunate. That was one of the things we've been working with the county on, is to lower our credit card fees. We do charge a credit card fee at the Scales House to offset these fees. So like I said, luckily this is kind of a pass-through as well, like I said, because we do collect the merchant fees at the Scales House. And then the last one I have is on, like I said, the
Good job
non-department.
on the bad debt, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, like I said, we are very fortunate. I just had a discussion with Mr. Campbell the other day about our bad debt, and I said we are very fortunate in our number of return checks, very minimal, and now with the worthless check program, like I said, we're able to collect on those immediately. And like I said, we're also, same thing with our outstanding accounts receivables. I mean, we are very fortunate in that we have very little that we're not able to collect, if any. Like I said, we have very good customers, and like I said, we're very fortunate with that.
On the amount of income we're receiving, to have it that minuscule is just,
It is, and
It's amazing.
we try to work with the customers. That's the one thing we try to do. We have, of course, we have a great, debt program that we try to work with the customers on. I'd rather collect it from them, like I said, and luckily, it's, knock on wood, we've been fortunate it works. And under the non-departmental, again, the only thing I had, of course, was the transfer and the recycling grant. Those were the two major changes. As you can see also, on the Horry County Community Waste Disposal Fee, that has gone up. That's the $2.25 that we send to the county each year. So, and of course, that's based on the tonnage. So that increased because the mixed construction tonnage increased. So they'll also see a significant increase as well. Okay, and I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie Todd. She's going to handle the Environmental Management Department. She'll begin on page 25.
Yeah, real quick on Environmental Department, we had very little changes. Really, there's only one. And so I've asked Ms. Todd to come in and kind of explain the engineering increase. So if you have any other questions, please ask her on this one.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Our significant increase in this is our engineering cost, and that's strictly because we have to complete the new source performance standards, is requiring compliance reporting from this point forward. And our Title V permit expires in December of this year, so it will have to be renewed and incorporate the new subpart XXX rules. So that's strictly engineering costs to get that additional reporting covered for this year and to get a new operating permit issued for our air quality.
So that's a one, because I see it goes up in fiscal year 19, but it goes back down in 97, so is that a
It
one-time?
goes down in 2020 by
Yeah, right.
15,000 because we'll have our new Title V permit. That's renewable every 5 years.
Okay.
Tort insurance also increased significantly.
Yeah, our tort insurance increased. We went with, we've gone with South Carolina Association of Counties for all of our insurance, and they do it a little bit different. Used to, they looked at the different positions, and based on a position, there was a different tort coverage. Now, there's just one flat amount per employee, and so that's why hers actually increased. You'll probably see that throughout everybody's budget. Okay, Bill?
Thanks, Steph. All right, let's move on to the landfill, and I'll, pardon me as we go through it, I've got my sheets here, and I'll try to find the page. In landfill in page 30, I think the first one I want to cover is the regular pay temporary. We increased that to $25,000. That's our substitute teacher plan that we call it, which we bring in folks that they're kind of part-time for us. When we get short of personnel out on the landfill, we'll have them come in, and it's mainly equipment operators, but they'll come in and work straight time, and they help us out a lot on the weekends, and we have special projects like our concrete crushing. We need extra personnel in order to get those projects completed out there. And we get short, we have illnesses, sicknesses, vacations out there. It's a really good program that helps us. We've got right now 2 people on standby that when we call them, if we're short help, we'll call them in to help us out.
You're doubling it.
I'm sorry?
You're doubling it.
Yes, sir. Pretty much, I was a little bit short this year on what I needed to do. I probably should have maybe anticipated a little bit better. But when we do the concrete crushing, it takes us about 60 days to do that. And we have to pull 2 and 3 people off to do concrete crushing. You've got somebody there watching it, you've got somebody loading it, plus you got someone on a dozer pushing and hauling the material off. So it takes 3 people off the landfill, and then we'll bring at least 1 more person in to help us out.
And you wait until you have a significant amount to crush.
We do it once a year, yes, sir, usually between January and March.
And Bill,
So-
you've probably had over the past 8 years, you've probably lost about, what, 4 positions maybe? So, you've been able to use this temporary help
Right.
to compensate.
It's been a good program, and actually, we've gotten a lot of help. Most of it comes from retired county employees come over to us, and they've already got equipment experience. So that's very beneficial when you come in. You already know how to operate the equipment.
You didn't replace the 4 that you lost?
No, sir.
Did not?
No, sir. We do the best we can with what we have and use our substitute teacher plan.
And I'll have to. Evidently it's working. Sometimes I take credit for that, and sometimes I wish I hadn't cut it as deep, but, Bill's budget did take a lot of the cutting when we first came here and overtime in those situations. But this program is worked well because you never know, and I coined it substitute teacher because that was the closest thing that I could get people to kind of understand what it was. If you need somebody with people on standby, and they're good operators. Steve trained them well.
I see some more insurance adjustments in workers' comp and property insurances again because of our revised policies.
Yes, sir. And you also see some changes, of course, in his department where it decreases because of his position being unfunded.
And on page 31, water and sewer is up to now.
Yes, sir. I was getting ready to get to that one. So, yeah, water and sewer, again, I was probably a little bit short there this year, but the main reason it went up, we started coloring mulch. And when we grind up the wood chips, the clean wood that comes through out there, this material's very dry. And if we didn't, when we go to color, we basically take an 8-hour day on a Saturday in color, and we have to run water through the grinder, the electric grinder, during the entire period. If we did, we dilute the dye that comes through. If we didn't do that, we'd probably quadruple what we spend in dye to color the mulch out there. So we dilute it, but it has to run the whole time. In addition, with the C&D material going up, 60% of what we take in there is wood. And it just gets so dusty, even though it's not a all-out stream running all the time. We do run water the entire day to keep the dust down for the workers over there. It's so dusty. So those are two of the, but the biggest reason is color in that mulch, that it's running full blast all day long while we're doing that program. On the same page, account 2430, the waste tires. As Jan said, that continues to go up every year. We budgeted, I think the previous year, we budgeted 150,000. In 18, we went to 182, and based on annualizing what we've done this year, we've got 225 in there. Even though she recoups the money during different grants and from the state, the landfill is still responsible budget-wise to cover all the expense that comes out of there. So it's just been continual, the increase coming from the tires out there.
But
So
we're only getting $110,000 from the state?
Right, we get some also back in grant money, and then there is some that we collect in tipping fees. Anybody that doesn't have the ST 390 forms where they have actually sent the money to the state, they have to pay a tipping fee. So between the tipping fee, the grant money, and then the other revenue, like I said, then
We do cover the.
we do cover the cost, yes, sir.
Line item 2432 is the concrete crushing. We reduced that from 80 to 70. We normally get 3 bids out there, and we've really tried to work our vendors out there where we can cover our concrete crushing annually for $70,000 now, so save $10,000 there. Line item 2434 on the same, I'm not sure if that's on the same page or not. Let's see, that must be 2434. I apologize, I've got them on my sheets here. It may not be there. Anyway, that's the contractual labors for the litter. We took it from 27.5 to 58. We get 0 inmates anymore. We haven't got any inmates for over 6 months. And so all the litter picked up, which is part of our compliance thing that we have to do with DHEC, every month we have to keep the litter picked up out there. In addition now to, everyone's aware of Highway 90, about the amount of emphasis put on Highway 90 to keep the litter up out there. So we have to get 4 people in to go out there and get 90. We're doing that every month. In addition, especially this time of the year, February, March, and April, with the winds blowing out there, we had 47-mile-an-hour winds a week ago in the landfill, and it kind of looked like a war zone out there. So much plastic bags that blew all over, and I know there's some work on that. But it takes a tremendous amount of time to pick all that litter up out there. So that's why we had to increase that, because, again, we get no inmates.
Take that one, Ms. Rich,
Go ahead.
for your presentation.
Yes, I think that probably will be with the presentation Thursday.
Okay. Anyway, but that's why we had to increase that right there. Let's see, on page 32, sustainment contracts, they went up about 6,000. That's our TM&R contracts that we have for repair and equipment. We've had a few items fall off, but the big item added on there was a new compactor we got this year, and the TM&R on that is roughly about $25,000 a year. So you didn't see that net result, because we did have some other equipment fall off that are running out of maintenance contracts. Excuse me. Okay. On page 33, the tires, we increased it from $30,000 to $40,000. 2 of our off-road trucks are assigned to the landfill 5 division. The tires on there are starting to show some wear. Each tire for an off-road truck is $1,750. So you figure if you get 4 of those tires, you're looking at roughly about 4,000 right there. And so each one of them has 6 tires on there, so they're starting to show some wear. And we repair them as much as we can, but that's the biggest reason why we had to increase that light on them right there, the off-road tires. So, any other questions on Department 510? Okay, we'll move on to 511, page 36. Line item 3110 was equipment M&R. This is the yard waste division. We reduced that from 172.5 down to 100,000. Last year, we had 172 budgeted. We had an old grinder that was about 10 years old, and cost to repair continued to grow. We got our new grinder this year, and we've got a warranty on it. We feel like we can reduce that down to 100,000, and that mainly covers most of your screens and your grinding teeth that wear out with as much as we grind out there. So we felt real comfortable we were able to reduce that down to 100,000.
What was the warranty term? Year?
We've got a year full warranty on it, and then we also purchased a 5-year extended warranty on the engine, you know, the drivetrain on it. So we're covered there, but you don't get any warranty on wear parts, anything like that. So that was really the only big change in the yard waste division right there. I see Department 512, which is our C&D division. Again, page 40 in your book there, the equipment repair and maintenance. We increased it from 17.5 to 25,000. We've got a couple real old pieces of equipment. We've got an old Aljon that we maintain. It's just a great backup piece of equipment for us. But it has been around now for about 8 years. So it does take a little bit of money to repair it and keep it going, but it keeps us going out there. That's the main thing, to keep the waste compacted. So we increase that. Plus, we've got an old Dozier out there that's out of warranty that we have out there. So we wanted to make sure we covered our cost on any repairs that we had in the C&D division.
Do you think the $8,000 is enough?
Yes, sir. I think it will be. If it gets to the point on the old Aljon out there, if something really big goes on it, it's probably not a worthwhile investment. You wouldn't want to put $100,000 into it.
No.
So, you know, our plan is to continue to do the small things, keep the unit going. It's a great backup, plus it keeps you know, our waste compacted out there, but you wouldn't want to invest that much into it. Okay, Department 513.
Before Bill gets into that, just real quick, if you'll see in Department 512, the significant increase, of course, in closure, post-closure, and landfill, it has to do, of course, with the increase in tonnage. Just wanted to point that out, that like I said, we did see a significant increase in mixed construction for the next year, so that's why you'll see a significant increase in those costs that were put inside for those future costs. I'm sorry, Bill.
That's all right. Jump in. Okay, Department 513, page 44. Line item 2130, tip and fee rejects. We reduced that from 120,000 to 70. Last year, if you remember when we started, we were having to make up some lost airspace for Sandlands and for the C&D from the Charleston rejects. And so we knew we had to take a lot over there at that time. And then when we made the decision to reduce it by day instead of by tonnage, we were able to complete that project a lot quicker than we anticipated. And so next year, we won't have anything, hopefully, to take to Sandlands. And that'll be just the rejects that come off the C&D line out there that we take out to the landfill. That number is probably going to be pretty good because we've got such a drive to increase that with the incentive that we're putting in. We've got operators, and I know Wayne and Chris are working very hard to try to keep pushing trucks. They're up on C&D constantly saying, no, you leave C&D and you go down to the processor down there. And so we're seeing that tonnage increase. We're getting a lot more demo jobs with the amount of building going on in the county out there. So anyway, we feel like, you know, that number's still going to be roughly about 70,000, but we don't have anything to go to Sandlands. Line item 2430, that's going to be on page 45. That's our contractual laborers. We increased that from 164 to 202. A couple reasons there. We started out with 5 and 6 laborers on the line. We now have gone up to 8 laborers out there with the push that we have, and we're processing a lot more material up there. Also, we ran into a similar problem that Mike had down at the MRF with temporary employees, where we had a lot of the Guatemalans here for a long period, about 4 or 5 years. And then they left and went on their way. And we had to go through temp companies here, just like Mike did, and we started having continual turnover. And he had a plan and shared it with me where if people stayed a certain amount of time and you knew they were dedicated and wanted to stay with you, you gave them more incentive and more pay. And we've done the same thing here, and we have very little turnover on the line now. We had 8 people up there. They miss every once in a while due to a day for whatever reason. But that plan's worked very good. So we've increased the pay a little bit in order to keep people here. Plus, that helps you process the material since they're familiar with the job. You get new people in, you can't go as much because they're out there trying to figure out what to do. So we've increased the amount of folks we have, plus we've increased what we pay if people stay a certain amount of time with us. So we've got more stability out there, so we wanted to cover our costs there. And line item 3110, which I think that was, let's see, I'm looking to find, yeah, that's on page 45 also. The equipment M&R, we increased it from 45,000 to 57.5. Our equipment out there, excuse me, is 7 years old. We started the project way back in 2012, and it's going to be 7 years old in FY19. It's beginning to show some wear. And of course, the more that you recycle out there, your wear parts, your bearings, your belts, Mike can tell you that down there, things wear out quicker. So we increased that there. One of the big things is the bearings and the belts over on the line out there. We switched out the trommel screen that we had in the back, the newer one, and we brought it up here. The one we had here had over 9,000 hours on it, and we have it now grinding in the yard waste area back there. But the sort line and all, it's still hanging in there, but things are starting to show a little wear, so we wanted to make sure we covered our costs right there. Same page, 45, small equipment. I'm not sure, because my page, it changed here. I'm not sure on the thing, it has 20,000 in there. We bought our containers this fiscal year, FY18, and so on my sheet I had 0, but I know we've got 19 or 20,000 here on this, but that was to buy roll-off containers that we needed to put rejects and other recycled materials in out there. So we got those this fiscal year. I don't anticipate needing any next year. So I'm not sure if that was just a typo or.
3115,
be-
grounds maintenance,
Yeah.
triple.
2222, the small capital.
So you're saying that should be 0 for?
Yeah, I didn't have anything, so I don't, maybe it might have been just a, error putting that in there, but we really didn't need that. And
You had
Mr. Hobbs, what was that?
maintenance, triple. 3115.
Grounds maintenance, just trying to keep the area clean out there. We've gone over budget on that this year with the materials we needed to keep it cleaned up out there. And so we wanted to make sure we were covered as far as any kind of, with the building and anything around it, just trying to keep it clean out there.
It's just your area.
Yes, sir. That was it in Department 513. Any questions on that? Okay, the next one is the maintenance. We'll start on page 48. The first one went up is overtime, line item 1110. We increased that from 12,000 to 35. The big reason for that is the maintenance department here is covering a lot of the work down at the MRF due to the Charleston contract. And it has to be done on Saturdays. We cannot shut the line down there during the week. Mike might talk about that a little bit more later on. But we pull the folks from Department 519 and send them down there on Saturdays and Sundays to get that work done. And I think it's paid off greatly. I know I don't hear too much about the line being down anymore. And our folks are pretty well skilled to take care of things that are needed down there.
When the Charleston goes away, you don't anticipate that happening?
No, I think once that goes away, it should drop off.
So FY '20 should be revised.
Yeah, that'll probably be less then.
Okay.
It was just, the Charleston thing just keeps being put out, so I'm not as familiar with it maybe as Mike was and all that, so yeah, that'll probably drop off next year. Line item 1410, the training and certification, we increased that $3,500. We've really tried to make a strong effort to send our mechanics to school, especially the CAT schools. We've got a lot of Caterpillar equipment out there. They offer training. Most of it's done in Columbia out there. We've started this year. We've sent some our mechanics back in October. We've got more scheduled at the end of this month. But we feel like it's paying huge dividends. With some of the software equipment we're buying, we're now able to go out on the landfill, the equipment, and take a laptop out there and diagnose a problem. And it's saving a lot of downtime when we can, even if it's under TM&R or whatever, or warranty, we can call CAT and say, hey, we've diagnosed, here's what the problem is, come fix it, instead of waiting for them to come out, diagnose it and all that. So, plus it's just making our people more knowledgeable about our equipment out there. It's the same if you send somebody to computer class training or something for your business, whatever, and they can handle this and
This
that.
is Richie and his crew.
Yes, sir.
Way to go.
So we just think it's paying huge dividends for us out there. Let's see, let's slide down to, like I said, my things is 3110, page 48, the equipment maintenance. We doubled that. The big reason we've added 3 pieces of equipment to the maintenance area, 2 fuel trucks and a forklift. The fuel truck fills all our equipment out on the landfill out there. Of course, we have the backup fuel truck also that's assigned to that department. The forklift we got was one that was at the MRF, and we've invested a lot in that. And we needed a forklift in the shop out there. We really did lift the heavy equipment out there. But the equipment it's got some age to it. And as you're aware, when anything breaks down now on a piece of equipment, it's not cheap to fix it, especially heavy-duty equipment. It's very costly. So that's why we bumped that up. We added 3 pieces of equipment to it. The maintenance contracts, which is the next page, line item 3130. That kind of goes into with our training that we've done. These are computer programs that we put on both the laptops that we have. A lot of them are about $1,000 per year. And some of the ones we have, made a note here, the electronic technician. This is, when you go to the school, then you have to buy the program in order to go out there and diagnose what's wrong with it. We also have the J-Pro, which is for the Mack and the Peterbilt and the Allison transmissions, which is with a lot of the collection and hauling equipment out there. We're still able to, not just landfill, but we can do a lot of what Rodney and Mike have with collection and hauling. The CAT SIS, which is the Service Information System, and that's good for all our landfill equipment. We have 2 laptops, and we want to have the program on both of them, because sometimes whether one of the mechanics could possibly be at the MRF, they could be diagnosed in 2 or 3 different pieces of equipment on the landfill out there. So that's basically computer programs that helps us go diagnose whatever problem might be, get a code out there, we can get parts we need in, and Rich has done a great job getting his folks trained out there on these programs. We have now we have a Wi-Fi hotspot that we got. We used to not have that, so we can go out on the landfill, we can hook up with the Caterpillar, whoever's a satellite, or right out there, and we get all the information we need right there at the equipment. You don't have to bring the equipment to the shop. We go to the equipment out there.
And this is saving downtime that we don't track in our budget.
Yes, sir. Significantly, when you can go to it. Years ago, we had to bring everything, if we fixed it, get it up to the shop up here. And now we're able to go out on the landfill and get it done. Couple other, let's see, page 49 still, traveling and lodging. That goes in line with the training and certification. Most all that is done in Columbia at Blanchard, the Caterpillar place at West Columbia there. So we had to increase that to make sure we cover hotel room. Usually it's 2 to 3 days that they're at the training. And right under that, 3120, the fuel and lubricants. Again, we added 3 pieces of equipment, the forklift and 2 fuel trucks. The fuel truck is, the main fuel truck is the one that utilizes the most fuel because it's fueling up everything out on the landfill that doesn't have rubber tires on it. And when you have grinders and compactors and bulldozers, they're running continually all day, 10.5 hours. So they're burning a lot of fuel out there. So that's why that's increased right there. And also the tires, the next page, page 50, we bumped it up $3,500. That's to cover the cost of all the additional equipment that we put in there. That's pretty well it on 519 and landfill division. Any questions that we can answer?
Looks like you,
You and your staff have done a good job. Richie, you guys have done a good job, man. Sure enough, of course, Mike and his crowd down there really done a good job. So you
It's a
guys-
team effort. We all work together, and we've got a great team.
Right. Glad to hear that you were moving some of your people and sharing them with the MRF. And, I mean, like you said, we in this thing, it's a team effort, and you're doing a good job with that, too. Thank you.
yeah, appreciate it. Can we take about a 5-minute break before we go on to the next one, please? Thank you.
Sounds like that cat equipment breaks down an awful lot. I keep hearing about, maintenance and what's up with the cat equipment?
Bill, Bill,
They got a salesman selling some bill of goods.
do they not have a Caterpillar training up at Florence Donaldson Tech?
Hold on.
Don't worry about it. I need to stand there.
With him here, what are we paying so much for?
Yeah, really.
With you here, what?
Okay, and I'm going to turn it over to Esther, let her go through the departments under her division.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
We're going to start on page 53 with the Public Education Department. We tried to hold our changes to a minimum this year. Page 54, line item 2222, small equipment capital, that kind of fluctuates up and down depending on what equipment we have planned to buy in the upcoming fiscal year. So there is a decrease in that line item. 2315, printing, there is an increase. It's doubled there. We use that account to purchase things such as labels for containers, office paper containers, invitations when we do the liaison banquet, things of that sort. So there's a slight increase there. If you turn to page 55, under 2333, field trips, that account is used to cover the cost of the field trips that we give to any schools in the Horry County school system, covers the cost of the bus, as well as a substitute teacher if that's required. We have seen an increase in the number of field trips that we've been been giving, so we did increase that account there. I think the only other area of increase I wanted to mention was just fuel and lubricants, and it's because of fuel. And
I will have to say, y'all have a challenge. It is amazing to me to see the cost of moving people around or going to these field trips or to the conventions, and the prices on that have just gone up astronomically.
Yes,
Not
ma'am.
sure why. I'm sure you probably don't know why either.
just because they can
But
sometimes.
just because they can, but the cost has just gone up quite a bit. Thank you.
Made some cuts too.
Yes, sir. We tried to kind of look at where we can offset whenever we had an increase to do. We went back and looked at where we could possibly offset and not put ourselves in a bind, so we did attempt to do that. If there are no more questions with the Public Education Department under Corporate Affairs, let's see, page 58, there's an increase in line item 2215, that's equipment rental, and that's the cost to lease the 2 copiers that we utilize here in the administrative office. It is on a lease, and there is a slight increase annually for that lease. So that's the reason for that increase. On page 59, small equipment, again, small increase there due to what equipment we anticipate purchasing this fiscal year. I know there had been some discussion with regard to promotions and public relations and the possible increase in that area. I did not show an increase this year. We wanted to see how well we can do. I'm all about trying to utilize the funds that we have in place, and also utilizing any free advertisement that we can get at any point in time. So we left that number as it was. So unless you all decide you want to increase it, we're going to try to work with it.
Our video has been terrific this year,
Yeah,
television promotion.
it has been, and I think you do a great job in getting the free advertisement and that, and I think it's good. We have had a lot of people say that they haven't seen. I don't know how they couldn't have, because I see quite a bit of it on TV, but even in the Envision 2040 public meetings, we had people that really had no clue who we were or what we did or whatever. So I certainly trust your judgment in what you're doing for this next year, but keep in mind that we do want to be visible, we do want to educate, we do want to help them. So if you see something that you feel you need the money for, let us know.
Absolutely.
That would help for that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Unless there's some questions, I am done.
Okay, Mike.
And sometimes when people say they haven't seen it, then you just wonder what they're watching. I mean, where do they get their news? Do they get it from the newspaper, or do they just Facebook, or we just don't know, but I see right many of them too.
Okay, on the Murph materials. Thank you, Esther. On the Murph budget's an exciting one to do, because no matter how much you got a budget, you still only can, you gotta try to adjust the cost based on revenue, so maybe one day we'll get out of that mode, but I doubt it. As you can see, we had an increase in overtime on page 62. We had an increase in overtime. That's got to do with, we plan to start rebuilding the plant and using some of the depreciation money to do that with, and we know we'll have some increase in costs in doing that. So we definitely had to increase some, rather, we didn't have people to increase, so we had to increase overtime in order to take care of that.
Make sure you see FY year 20, the difference between 19 and 20?
Yeah, what you're showing there is, what we think the cost will be after, Charleston goes away, so in FY '20. The next big, thing you see is in, 2130, which is a reduction in tipping fees, and we've seen the amount of tipping fees coming to the landfill reducing. On page 63, 2430 contract labors went up by about 7,000. We still having time, with getting some labor, and as Walmart and Tarchet, as my wife calls it, continue to go up on wages, it's gonna get tougher and tougher to fill those. I mean, you're thinking now that, I think I seen on the news the other night where Target's going to $12 for a minimum wage and gonna be at 15 by 2020. You know, it's gonna be harder and harder to find people at $9 an hour.
Is that a typo in FY '20?
No,
We actually will save that much.
yes.
That's after Charleston.
That's after Charleston. We actually put it back to approximately what it was prior to Charleston. That's where a lot of these numbers came from. There's numbers that we truly knew what it was, but there was some that we actually knew that, would not change.
But if the wages goes up, this may go up as well.
Yeah,
If
if we
you put
see,
it, if you put it before Charleston, because I guarantee you the wages we'll pay by 2020 will be more than they were before Charleston.
yeah. And as the spring comes on, we're seeing, more people being out of work, harder to get workforce. They're leaving, going to those summer jobs, so. The next big change was in materials and supplies. A lot of that's in filter cost for our air conditioning units. The board gave us approval to put AC units in. The amount of dust that's in the facility, we change filters daily. So we go through about 12 to 14 cases of filters a month. And there's some costs there. Wire increase, cost in wire to do belling with is going up. And for all indications from our buyer, due to the new tariffs that's been added on steel, that our price of wire is going to go up tremendously higher. Another increase in this was created from gloves, glass sales, and safety glass sales and vest sales. We have to budget for it, even though we get the revenue back. So we budget for the, if we sell $1,000 worth of gloves and vests and we get $1,500 back, Jan gets the revenue, we get the budget number. So that's pretty much how that works. So as we sell more and more gloves and glasses, we have to keep going up on that budget number a little bit. Our next one on page 64, you'll see a large increase in building maintenance and repair. We hopefully do not have to spend this money, but we're having problems with our AC units up on top of the main building. One air interchange unit up top alone is about $60,000. We've had to put a compressor in it this year. We had another one that went out. We had to put another compressor in it. So we're scared, and Jan and I talked about it, was to go ahead and let's put some in budget just in case it went out, we'd have money in the budget. So the money's there. Let's hope we don't have to use it, but it's there if we need it. Because I'm being told that for those two units, if we had two of them off the top of the main building to go out, that it'd be as much as $70,000 to replace them. One of them's a big interchange, putting fresh air into the building. That's the biggest one. 3120 is basically fuel increase. Tires by about $20,000. That's got to do with our big piece of equipment, 914. It's about time for the tires, and we're hoping we can make it until our new budget, because we do not have them budgeted this year in there to replace. So we're hoping that we'll meet the budget, make it into next year to buy it. Those tires alone is about $17,000 for those 4 tires. the hard rubber tires on that piece of equipment.
Which the hard rubber, of course, reduces the maintenance of the tire.
Well, you can't run them if you don't have hard rubber. You just cut them all constantly.
We had the borrowed equipment and learned real quickly, didn't we?
Yeah, you end up buying tires quick. Any other questions on that, the MRF's budget? On 530, very little changes in this budget. We basically, on page 67, under 3110, you see a $5,000 increase in repairs and maintenance. That's based on some historical numbers that we have for this year. The next big increase is on page 68, which is for your fuel. And we saw an increase in fuel from last year. Any questions? I'll definitely try to answer them. That's the only major changes in 530 in the unincorporated, the collection and hauling department.
One question, Mike. On page 62, for FY19, is that reduced in salaries based on the fact that we're going to be losing one person from the MRF, meaning you?
Sir? Say that, I was trying to get to the page. Yeah, no, that's basically what, that's all of our full-time employees that working there. And that's why you did not see, that's why you seen just the regular CPI increases on that, where it went from 425,000 to FY20 to 437,000.
The decrease from 18 to 19
right.
has to do with the fact that they had a manager's position.
That I took out.
That they no longer have a manager's position over there now. What they've done is they've actually taken that position and they've used it for a maintenance supervisor at a reduced amount. So that's why that salary, like I said, instead of filling the manager's position, they used it for a maintenance supervisor.
I didn't understand what you're saying, Mr. Hughes, but and like Jan said, we had a supervisor and a manager over at the MRF, and now we will only have a supervisor.
I knew I wasn't too far.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all.
Okay, like I said, staff has done a great job, like I said, definitely going through the line items, looking at each line item, cutting where possible, slight increases, excluding the non-departmental, which had the largest increase in it. Overall, we've only seen about a 3.2% increase in our operating budget, and that is including, mainly the largest increases being in our, of course, health insurance, retirement. Those line items are our biggest increases. So I think staff, like I said, year after year, we've done a great job of maintaining, only increasing where possible, and decreasing if at all possible. So I really appreciate their help in helping us with the budget. The unincorporated collection system, of course, is the next section on page 69. Not going to go through this. Like I said, we take this budget, we submit it to Mr. Gosmell over at the county. This year, he kind of went through it and made some changes, made some cuts to it as well. So like I said, we feel like we've kind of been through it very thoroughly with him as well. And like I said, we've submitted that to them, that they'll present, of course, at their budget retreat. So I'm not going to go through that with you, but if you have any questions, please, like I said, feel free to ask us. Going to go over to page 85, which begins on our capital budget. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to go through every line item. I just want to pick out a few big ones that I had mentioned to you earlier, that we have some large ones. Of course, like I said, the biggest one being, we've got one of the biggest ones, I should say, the main entrance road into the landfill here. As you can see, we've got $1 million budgeted for that, and I can let Bill kind of tell you exactly what all maybe is involved with that. But that, as you can see, is money that would have to come out of our general construction and development account, and that's one of those designated funds that I said we don't allocate any money there, so there's no way for that account to ever grow. So that's why I said this year we're actually going to transfer some funds into that account.
We can't use any ride two money for that?
Good try.
If you want to try to get us some, we'll take it.
What'd you think, Steve? Are we revising the entrance because of you?
And And under that one is the Environmental Parkway road repair. So we've got two major road repairs that we need to have completed next year if possible. And like I said, so that's one of the reasons like I said, we budgeted to transfer some money in there. And hopefully maybe even quarterly, we'll be able to transfer some money into that account to help with these repairs. On page 86,
Before you go to that, to the next page, the piggyback Phase 3 permit application, that's a big one.
yes,
And
sir.
that's a new initiative.
And that is. I'll let Bill kind of talk a little bit about that one.
Yes, sir, that's the engineering cost to get it, everything permitted, planned, all the, everything to go with that. We'll get that purchase order up front, but that will be spread out over a period of whatever it takes to get the permit for piggyback 3. If it was 10 years, it may be spread out over that period, or 5 years, whatever it might be. But that's the upfront engineering cost we want to go ahead and budget.
Has the consultant given you what kind of timeline he thinks that might be?
It's just a guess, you know. He said sometimes hopefully we could get it in 5 years. I mean, I think piggyback, the first piggyback took 10. So, but the department seems to be responding a little bit quicker to folks' needs. And so it was wishful, hopeful, whatever. It could be done in 5 years. If that's something, you know, we've had a preliminary meeting with the department. They feel like it's doable. They do have some questions about it, but it is doable. And Ms. Creech was in that meeting when we had it. So, you know, we'll proceed on, try to answer all their questions and get them comfortable with it. But, you know, hopefully it's something that'll come to fruition down the road.
Yeah, that, just for the board's information, we have met with DHEC and we have talked about utilizing the property that is here to add life and landfill space. And obviously that's needed, that's within our mission, and we continuously look at that. DHEC, just when you start talking with them and asking questions, maps have to be prepared, engineers have to be there to tell them what we plan to do, what we could do, what we couldn't do. Our engineer met with them. They are positive about this, but you have to go through so many steps to get to where you could even apply for a permit, and those are time-consuming and expensive, especially where the engineering is concerned. And hopefully, for the county and for the Solid Waste Authority, this will come to fruition because it would add decades' worth of life to this landfill for the citizens here. So if we get any closer to that, the board, of course, will be made aware at the point that DHEC starts giving us information to fill out, and let the board members know that and look at it.
Even though we have a piggyback now, this is new, and so it'll be a full, you know, full thing. We have to go through every step, you know, FIN committees and public awareness and all that. So it definitely will take some time. You just can't say, okay, give us another piece of piggyback or something.
But the potential to lengthen the lifespan is worth it, I think.
Yes, sir. And it's very promising if we get it.
Mike can expedite the process.
That's great, Mr. Johnson. I agree with you. That would work.
You might have something there, Mr. Johnson. Need to talk about that. Yeah. But DHEC does, they feel good about it. And I know there's quite a few of you that have met with DHEC, and their thoughts have been positive. Is that not correct?
Right now, we're fishing.
You're fishing.
Yeah.
Okay.
They said it's doable,
Do.
and that's,
Didn't say they'd
take
let us
that
do
how
it.
it is.
Yeah.
You know, and it's-
Usually their first answer to that is no, right?
right. I think, you know, the engineering folks, they've got some work to do. They've got to really come up with a really good plan, you know, to get DHEC, you know, feeling good about it. But DHEC did say it's doable.
It is, and it takes years because you have to have so many public information meetings. You have to have so many meetings with DHEC. You have to have someone make sure that everything we do is according to their regulations, not only in the county where we are, but statewide and federal. These are not easy things, and they are lengthy and costly, but in the end, I think it will be great for the county.
Getting beyond no is congratulations.
All right, the last.
We'll just have to stick Steve on them if we have a problem.
The last item I've got for you is on page 86. As you can see, the single stream sort system. What they're anticipating, I think, doing there, and I'll let Mike kind of explain, because we don't have the money to actually replace the system, because a new system would probably be about $6 million. But what Mike is anticipating is going in and I think doing some replacements, some repairs. I'll let him kind of explain what that might all involve.
Yeah, we're looking at trying to do several things, and there's sections of the line that can be upgraded to make a better quality product coming out the other side with less maintenance. We're looking at anything that can reduce our maintenance costs associated with the system
And improve our quality.
and improve our quality at the same time. But we're also looking at having to rebuild the whole line, and that is putting in new belts, new pans that the belts slide on, new bearings, new end rollers and stuff like that. Our first brush on it was we'd contract out the part of it that we needed to contract and do part of it in-house that we could do in-house, especially after Charleston goes away. What Richie and him has done is as the line went, we had one line that went down, and when it went down, there was a decision made to go ahead and rebuild that line so that it wouldn't have to be rebuilt in 12 months. There wasn't no need to take it down and then had to put it back partially and then tear it back down again a few more months, and it still not worked properly while it was going. So we're doing that. So we're going to try to take this money, and when we get done, have a facility that we can depreciate it again over about 10 years. And the life expectancy will be of it for another 10 years. We're first going to maintain, like I said, first going to rebuild the line and then take what money's left and upgrade the system. Question?
How, are you talking about rebuilding the equipment we have?
Certain
And,
portions of it, the lines,
Okay,
the conveyor lines, that part of it you would. There would be some things like, one of my recommendations would be to take the V-screen out. It's very costly. It's $15,000 to $20,000 to replace the rollers, the rubber rollers in it every time you do it. I can put a ballistic sorter in it for about $600,000. Don't have no rubber wheels to change. So in my mind, I can cut the cost over 10 years of maintenance and put a piece of equipment in that does better. That's the kind of things we're going to look at.
the ballistic sorter was what I'm glad you brought up, because we have been looking at those. And you're right, I think that would be a better piece of equipment for our MRF.
Yeah. You know, and if we do it good and we got enough money left, there may be something else we need to do. But, you know, we want to start here and work our way and see what we got left.
When we go on these trips that we go on, sometimes you find a great new idea, but a lot of times you find out that the track that you're on is the track that you need to be on.
And that everyone has the same difficulties we have.
Yeah.
It's not that
Yeah.
unique.
And we've heard from numerous companies that the ballistic is the way to go to get away from all these rubber wrapping, plastic wrapping wheels that we have.
Yeah.
So it's something that we heard last week, and by a company that didn't put our equipment in, but the people that put our equipment in pretty much saying the same thing.
And China's reaction is because we've dumped on them too long.
That's
They
exactly.
want it cleaner.
That's
Yeah.
And the-
exactly
and the
right. And-
cleaner our product is, the more demand there'll be for it.
Exactly.
Danny and I actually saw one of those ballistic sorters, 5, 6 years ago from Stadler. That was the first one I thought when we actually run into it. They came in and did a presentation out of Charlotte, North Carolina, German company.
Yep.
And it was called Stadler. That was the first one we saw. And that was, it impressed us way back when we first looked at it. We thought that it did what it said it'd do.
Jan, how about go to the bottom of page 86? And Jan, I want you to explain this key down here on what these designated counts are all about. And each one of them has an A, B, C, D, and E, and then that references your right side columns on these pages of where this money will come from out of what account. But just explain what these accounts are.
Exactly. This is the funding sources to cover what we've got in this capital. And as you can see, anything with an A is coming from our equipment replacement fund. Anything with a B is coming from our closure fund, which, like I said, is anything that we know is going to assist in the future closure of the landfill. Anything with a C is a construction development, and that is our general construction and development account that handles the infrastructure here on the landfill, which I said, like I said, will take care of the roads, the entrance road to here, the entrance road to the MRF. As you can see, another big item we've got in there is the tipping floor repair over at the MRF, those type items. And that's the account that I was mentioning to you that we need to transfer some funds into this next year to make some of those repairs. Then we have our landfill construction fund, which is our actual, like I said, the future landfill construction, where that piggyback development would come from as well. And then, of course, our unrestricted. Those are the E items that we mention each year. We've been fortunate enough that this year, and again in FY19, we'll be able to set aside some funds, around $500,000, to make some of those purchases. Won't purchase all of them, but each year, each time when I take a look at the quarterly transfer, hopefully we'll have a little bit of funds to help with some of those items. Like I said, we're getting better about them. Like I said, it is quite a bit this year because we've got a little over $3 million set aside for some of those items. But normally what we do is we go through, once the budget's approved next year, and I have them go ahead and prioritize them. Which ones are most important for you to purchase this next year? And so, like I said, they try to take a look at those and see which ones we have to have, which ones maybe, we can put off or carry over to another year if necessary. So that's where our funding source is.
Tipping floor repair, the same floor that's been repaired before?
Additional flooring. In a larger space this time.
Not the
Yes.
same
Right.
spot.
Okay.
No, what we've done is we've gradually moved throughout the process as the floor wears, so we'll be adding on to existing areas. One area last year, we didn't have enough money in around the baler, where all the acids from the drink bottles and stuff eat the floor out. We didn't have enough time to do that, enough money to do that with last year. That's included in this part to be done this year as well. But one other thing while we own this, I want you to realize, if you add up all the A's there in your column and you subtract it from 4.6 million, you got less than $1 million left in that capital budget to buy equipment with the following year.
That's right.
Jan and I, and even back when Donna was here, we talked about that capital fund that we get beat up because we had $5 million in there. That account could be depleted in this coming year alone, just about.
If you look on page 90, let's see, I think it's 93, is our equipment replacement fund. And Mike's exactly right. If you look at what our projected balance is at the end of FY19, it's a negative $143,000, and that's with us transferring a portion of that funds I wanted to transferring $510,000. That account gets depleted because we're appreciating based on what we're currently purchasing that at. But 5-10 years from now, when we replace that piece of equipment, instead of it being $250,000 when we bought it, now it's $450,000. So that's another account that we've got to look at, starting to transfer some funds in to get it built back up as well. That's why we're transferring some funds in here this year. And that's why we continue to look at the purchases, making sure we're purchasing it for the best cost that we can. Granted, it's estimates what we have in here in the budget. As you saw on the update, 9 times out of 10, it's well below what we budgeted. However, like I said, we're going to have to continue to watch that. Staff does a great job of trying to extend the life of it as much as they can, but even by extending it, you're still going to purchase it at a much higher amount.
This is an additional cost to Charleston as well.
Not necessarily, I would say. Like I said, because
You
like
don't really see a direct?
We probably wouldn't have to rebuild the line as quick but, you know, you got something out there working about 10 years, you know, the V-screen could run for ever and a day as long as we want to continue to put the wheels in it. We, every 6 months, we have to put new wheels in it. We didn't have to do that but maybe once a year before. So there's an additional $20,000 cost there, but we're going to replace that V-screen with an upgraded piece of system. That didn't have anything to do with Charleston. The line wear on the belts and stuff, absolutely, it does. Bearing, absolutely it does. But that's going to be the smaller portion cost of rebuilding that system out of the $3 million. You know, you're talking one optical sorter and line, $600,000. So, you know, we'd probably had to replace the belts, but we probably wouldn't have to done some to the extent of the maintenance on the lines themselves.
One thing to add too on the equipment replacement, your Tier 4 engines, which are in there now to reduce emissions out there, we're getting away from all the old stuff and everything's got to have Tier 4, and they're anywhere from about 11 to 12% higher for a piece of equipment. So if you spent $1 million on a compactor, it's $1.1 million now. That's another $100,000 to get the Tier 4 engine. So everything we get going forward, I think in in 2018, I think, Mike, you can correct me on it.
Right.
Everything has to have the Tier 4 engine for emissions reduction. So that's also adding a lot to this right here.
And it ain't something that's happened overnight. It's been going on for years because you know, you buy a garbage truck. I could used to buy a garbage truck for $180,000. It's $280,000 now. Well, there's only $180,000 put aside in that budget to replace it with. But when you go buy it, $100,000 had to come from somewhere else in that depreciation fund. Typically, when we fully depreciate something, we replace it or rebuild it, or try to use it for some life. But that $3 million that's set aside in that budget was for that line, and it's been fully depreciated. So there should be $3 million in there that belongs to that line.
There's time to rebuild it, and it's run longer than we expected, has it not?
No, I mean, I can't disagree with Mr. I said. Some of the cost is due to the increased production of the unit.
Right.
But I don't think it's $3 million worth.
Do you have everything figured in there to buy the equipment we've been discussing to buy?
It's in the budget.
Okay, it's in the budget. Whether or not we buy it remains to be seen, but there is enough in there.
Or whether or not we got the money, but yeah.
You're looking at it. The other thing, we have talked about storage for you behind the MRF, because some things can't get wet, some things we might wait to keep so the prices go up. Do you have enough in here to build these storage areas there that you need?
Yeah, and I'm always looking at ways to cut those costs. I did put that funding back in there this year. I met with Danny earlier late last week and gave him a way I thought I could cut some money on building that facility and doing a few things, and got him to agree with me, and I'm trying to move forward on that now.
The LFG expansion,
That's the landfill gas expansion.
that's a gas expansion. That's why it's
It looks like we might have a need for the storage more so with the commodities. Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Pass this budget, and we'll be okay.
Say again?
So as Mike mentioned, you'll see over the next year, 2 years, we're going to continue to work to build that fund back up. The equipment replacement fund, the landfill construction, or the construction development, not landfill construction. Those two accounts, to build those up, to be able to do some of the repairs, to keep the equipment replacement fund up. And I think in the past, we've seen where we keep putting the money towards the piggyback. We're going to kind of switch gears a little bit and try to build these funds back up to where they need to be to continue to be able to replace this equipment as needed. So, all right, these budget figures just.
These designated funds, they approve the money to come out.
That's right. That's right. The designated funds, like I said, you know, any money that, like I said, that we use out of these, of course, you know, is through board's approval. Now, of course, once the budget's approved, of course, the funds are being approved at that time for them to be able to use for any of these items. But anything above and beyond definitely has to go back to the board for their approval before any of the funds are utilized. Yes, sir. These budget figures have all been submitted to the county. They have a budget retreat next week. And like I said, and they'll go through it as well, so they have everything as well. The next step in our process, of course, is, I'll bring it to the board at the next board meeting for approval of the budget if you don't have any changes at this time. Like I said, you know, if there's nothing else that you have any questions on, like I said, I'll bring it to the board for their approval. We'll actually have a, public hearing as well. I think we have a public hearing first before I do the approval. I back that up. But like I said, we will have a public hearing, then approval for the budget, and then we'll have a budget in place come July 1st. Are there any other questions that we can answer? Yes, sir.
First, I would like to make a motion on the pay scale that was presented yesterday, that we have a 4-year objective to meet those guidelines that you're recommending, rather than implementing it all fully in 1 year. And it's probably going to take a lot of work, because not every function should be treated the same. It's probably going to be unique, depending on whether they're line workers or supervisory or administrative. So I would like to propose a motion that, that the pay scale proposal that was presented be implemented over 4 years.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion about this motion? Mr. Hughes?
Yeah, I got a question before we do that, because I'm still a little concerned about the grade and the step. I just need to understand, we talked about yesterday that we did not change the grade and we did not change the step. Is that what we said?
That's right. We did not change our grade and step plan at all. What we did was we took the positions and put them into new grades. But the
Okay.
overall grades and step did not change.
What mechanism did you use to be, because the job performance haven't changed.
Right.
How did you decide who went into what segment?
We took the positions, and like I said, when we did the comparison to the county, to the city, and we compared the minimums, is what we did. We compared our minimum to their minimum for each position. For instance, an accountant position, our minimum was 30,000, their minimum was 33,000. Horry County's minimum was 33,000. So in order to take our accountant's position and move it up to the new minimum of 33,000, we found a grade and have it be maybe grade 17 that was 33,000 was the minimum. So we changed that position from a grade 15 to a grade 17, so therefore they had a new minimum. We didn't change the grade 15 minimum, we just moved the position to a new grade. Like I said, based on that minimum.
So does that mean everybody would have either moved up or down a grade?
That's exactly right. Everybody moved up a grade. That's exactly right, yes,
Moved
sir.
up or
Everybody-
down?
Well, everybody moved up a grade because every minimum in every position went up. So everybody moved up a grade.
And so there was no formula, we just went to the counties, whatever that position, and then arbitrarily we decided that this number would fit that grade?
Exactly. Yes, sir.
No, they said basically it was looked at an accountant at Horry County and their job duties versus the accountant here and their job duties to make sure they matched up. And the county said that position was worth 33,000 minimum starting salary. Okay, so then we went on the step plan grade and found us a $33,000 number grade.
On the one
On our
that
plan.
fits now?
Yeah,
Right.
on our plan. So we put them in that grade at 33. Then you got the steps going across.
Right.
And let's say this person made 37,000 currently now.
Okay,
So then we went to the step plan and said, all right, well, the minimum's 33, but they fit in step 2 to the current salary that you can fit them.
okay.
And if it was $100 difference, then they would've got 37,100 if they were in that step 2. If step 2 on that plan was $37,100, then you would have moved them to that step 2 because that was the closest to them without giving them a decrease in pay.
Okay, what I just want to make sure is that you were closest to that step, that people didn't be bumped down or bumped out of a different step.
Nobody went down
And that
because
you
our
were at-
minimums were so
yeah,
much.
that you were at the closest step that matches where you are now.
Currently.
Versus not being, arbitrarily somewhere different.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Thompson?
Yeah, can you just take one position and as an example and walk through that? And show exactly, you know, where that person was and where they, how that impacted them? Because in looking through it, there was a big difference between a lot of them, and some moved, you know, from steps way down, and some stayed in the same steps.
Okay, let's take, if we take like a heavy equipment operator 3, and we take, and I don't know if you still have your sheet from yesterday, I'm looking at number 26. And I think Mike, I've got some right over here.
Can you give us the step sheet that you had the other day too? Yesterday, a copy of the step sheet?
Plan, can you get a copy of that step? Bring it, that'd be great. If we take a look at at heavy equipment operator 3,
That's number 26.
number 26. When we started this, we took a look at our heavy equipment operators. And our current minimum for our heavy equipment operators was $29,620. Horry County's was $32,956.
That's not 26, is it?
Well, I'm the comparison sheet that we use, because that's how we started it. What we did is we took a look at the positions, and we said, okay, what is our current minimum for our heavy equipment operators? And our current was $29,620, and Horry County's was $32,956.
With the blue on the top, H2.
And I really need to wait until Nanette brings that.
Step
Do you have the step thing right there, Mr.?
You
All right.
got it?
So while are we waiting on her to bring back the step sheet, because I think that's going to help us out a bunch while we can look at it, why would somebody be willing to back up? Because the steps is the years of working. Why would they be willing to back up 3 or 4 years?
Well, for cost, you know, I mean, I understand years ago, many years ago, when we first implemented this, we took and put people into place based on possibly near their number of years of service. But in order for us to do that now, you know, if we raise the minimum and put them in maybe the same step that they're currently in, that's exactly right, we couldn't afford it.
I understand that, but that's what I'm saying. Why would somebody be willing to back up?
Well, because we're giving them a little bit more each year by raising their minimum. You know, instead of their 3% being based on 29,000, now their 3% is going to be based on 32,000. So it does give them more each year on their annual increase. And so that's what we were trying to do, because we're having so much difficulty filling these positions. We were trying to take step 1 and at least get everybody's minimum up to where it needed to be in order for us to be able to fill any position that we may have here. No matter if it's a truck driver, if it's an accountant, you know, if it's a heavy equipment operator on the landfill, if we get that minimum up to where it needs to be, then at least if they were to leave tomorrow, hopefully we could fill that position with a qualified person. Because that's the number one problem we're running into right now.
With our objective of keeping employees that we have experience with, and we're just giving them, you know, we're pretty much locking them in 3% of the minimum for 24 years or whatever. Why are we giving them 3% on the minimum instead of 3% on their salary?
Because when we put the step plan in, sold the board on that, that was a question. And that was pretty much the only way we could get the step plan in, that it was 3% would be on the minimum, not on your salary, because get 3% on, if you start at the minimum, you get 3% on your minimum. Then next year, it would be 3% of that minimum plus 3% of your new step plan.
Compounding effect.
Yeah,
Be
and,
compounded.
and the board liked this idea, so that's where we're going.
Right. It really would not be sustainable figuratively for what people would pay. Now, it's been done different ways, but when you add the 3% from that minimum, they're also getting whatever percentage goes up in retirement and everything else. So the board looked at it at that if you added it from this and that there would be some And you have to remember that going on in years forward, you have to be sustainable enough to be able to pay those things. Yes, Mr. Ives?
This is a different topic, but on the same element here, that it seems that we use 3% uniformly. What if each supervisor were given a range? And they could determine on their staff should get 1%, who should get 2%, who might get 5%, because they're more productive than other members of their staff.
Well, that sounds good, but that goes back to the supervisor. I've seen it work where they just give everybody the same amount, I got 10 employees, you're gonna give me $2,500, I'm gonna divide it by 10 and give each one this. The supervisor has the ability on this plan
They do,
to give them 3% or none.
or none.
If they're not doing a good job, if they're unsatisfactory on any checklist, they don't get the 3%, they don't get their staff.
So it's not divided, it's either all of, I mean, you get the 3%, or
That's your
if
step plan.
Right.
That's the way the plan was created.
Right.
Well, following up on Bo's concept, being an old HR person, we would have evaluation forms where you would do evaluations based on the employee's performance. So you could have good, excellent, satisfactory, whatever, and you were awarded based on whatever grade you got. So you may not get anything depending on where you are, or you may get 3% at the top, and if you're in the middle, you may get 1%. Was that anything that was considered? But that 1% or 2% would be based on your salary, current salary, not on the minimum.
We have evaluation sheets, and I sign off on them, I feel like every day. But if you give somebody 1% this year on their evaluation, it won't fit in the step plan.
Yeah, well, I guess what I'm saying is, it would be in lieu of a step. This is the first time I heard of a step plan. I'm not familiar with step plans. I'm familiar with evaluations. It not only does it create excitement on the job, it motivates people to be at the top. So if I've got 3% because I was the best performer, then I feel like I'm the best performer out there because I got my 3%, and that's what the supervisor said. So anybody who got 1% this year, they may try to get 2% next year or 3% the next year because they know that their increase in salary is going to be based on their performance. Basically, what I'm seeing now is we have a satisfactory list, and it's a checkoff. And if I meet all those checkoff, then I get 3%. Even though I may work harder than Mike.
Mike and Mike.
That's all I'm saying, but I know that's what was put in place, and the step plan is in place, but I was just curious about
If
that.
we
I'm
hadn't-
not trying to change the step plan.
If
I'm
we-
just asking the question.
If we had not put this step plan in 8 years ago, and we were lucky enough to get one cost of living out here, getting people to the minimum today would be 3 or 4 times what we're looking at.
Because of salary creep.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that was my question.
It was worth discussing. I was curious.
Yeah, I'd still like to show the example of, that position 26.
How does the 3% compare, we're comparing everything else to Horry County and them, how does the 3% compare to their raise incentives?
I don't know.
On the current salary or minimum salary?
Current.
See, we've always, in my business, we've always based ours kind of off the teacher's plan type deal too, which is basically what the county's doing, which is a percentage off the salary that they're at, because it's kind of like, Michael was saying here, that flat fee, that don't give people much incentive to move their salary, up above. And 3%, I was looking here on the minimum, on grade 7, $20,184, did some quick math. 3% on that's only $11.64, and then you take out 20% tax, 27% taxes, that's $3.14. So that guy's gonna get a raise of $8.50. That's, to me, I know one time I told a boss, he gave me a 50-cent raise, and I told him he could keep it, that, you know.
Well, I had a fellow today just about tell me
We're not
I
gonna
could-
keep employees at $8.50. I mean, if that's what we're doing all this for is to employee retention, that's not giving them much there.
It's not retention as much as it is getting the minimums up to where we can hire the ones we need. Now, we're hoping that, and go through this thing like Lance said on the HO three, where you can step through follow him all the way through on
Okay.
whatever number employee it is. What is it?
26.
Number 26.
Number
26. Okay, and like I said, and currently, 26, as you can see, they were grade 14, which on the STEP plan, a grade 14 starts at $29,620. Okay, but according to the county, like I said, their HEO3 minimum is, go back to this,
32.
let's go back to here, was $32,956. So we took a look at our steps and our grades, and we went down, and we said, okay, we need a grade that's closest to 32 without, like I said, really without going, we didn't want to go under. So we went up to grade 17, which is $33,666. So that's why we took line 26, as you can see, and we made them a grade 17. Now, because they were currently making $42,952, we went down to the steps and found the step that was closest to 42,000 on grade 17. Without, like I said, without going under the 42,952, and so it's going to be step 10 at $43,765.80. And so that's why we put them at a grade 17, step 10. Now, there's a little bit of difference in the rate you have here and the rate that's on here. I think it has to do with rounding because this is actually an hourly position. And so it actually has, like I said, we adjusted it by the hourly rate. But that's how we put them. We didn't change what we had here. We didn't change our grades or our steps. We just found a new placement for them within our system by raising that minimum. Does that make sense? Did you kind of follow what I did there, what we did?
Their maximum is going to be greater than where they're currently at.
That's exactly right. So like I said, it bumped them down because as you see, they were a grade 14, step 15 because they've been here maybe, obviously sometime. I don't know that they've been here 15 years. So they're now a grade 17, but they're only a step 10. They have gone down in steps, but they've gone up in grade, which raises their minimum, which gives them each year, their 3% is now based on the 32,000 versus the 29,000. So each year they'll see a little bit of difference at the review. Currently, they're actually going to get a bump of $811.20 a year because we had to put them in a step somewhere. So that's why, like I said, they are going to get a little bit of a bump now, but annually is where they'll actually see the increase.
But Lance made the point yesterday, which I have to agree with, that those that have been here a while, like 26, are going to be a little bit miffed at 29 and 27, who suddenly are making $4,000 more than they were making when they started, which is a big jump.
It is, and that's because they're at the minimum, and we bumped the
understand.
minimum. I understand.
The exercise you're going through, I don't think you're being unreasonable, but you're still making room for some
Right. Had we put them at
turmoil
the same,
among
had
the
we put
staff.
them at the same step they currently were at, if we had just raised their grade and put them at the same step as Mr. Johnson mentioned, sure, it would have kept that distance between the new person and the person that's been here for 10 years, but cost-wise, wasn't something we felt like we could afford to do.
I had a downtown, and I'm just speaking from experience, we had this to happen. My secretary said, well, I didn't get $200, and this other one got $1,000. I said, I'd be willing to move you back to where she's making and give you that raise. No. I said, because you've been getting your money all along. So it's,
And you also have the ability to make more in the future, which had not been done. And for those of you that are new, that have never been through the audit process and are in private industry, that was one of the hardest things for me to come with a look at the way the county and the cities and federal and state do audits, because it makes no sense to me. Having said that, from private industry, when you hire someone and you give them a salary, for it to be productive for you, you look at that person and what his work makes for you. He has to make his salary, and he has to make you money. That isn't the way it is looked at in the public arena. But for us to be sustainable, we would have to go back and ask for another tipping fee and work with the council to do that and do all of these things. And at the end of the day, Jan has to balance this budget. And so when you put those three things together and you look at them, that's one reason, in my opinion, it's confusing, and isn't the way that I did it in my private life and my private business life. And I don't think we can be fair 100% or work out 100% in here in those perceptions. And all of you had good questions, and I see all of that.
But to
So,
go back to my motion,
Yes.
if we did it in
What-
four steps rather than one,
okay,
morale issues wouldn't be as peaked as they might be with a one-time jump, a one-time leap.
okay. Does
Because
any-
everyone's merging
let me,
onto the new scale on a gradual basis rather than making.
Okay. Mr. Knight?
But then you're looking at having the morale thing 4 times
yeah.
on the,
Yeah, you're looking at the morale thing 4 times. Okay. Mr. Knight, was there anything you wanted to add to that? I could see that pensive look on your face.
We got to make it work.
Right.
Yeah.
Somehow.
We got to make the step plan, maintain what we have. And the only way I would see that you could do it was over 4 years, everybody, if I was gonna get $400, you're gonna get $100 this year, $100 next year, and the third year, and the fourth year, you're gonna be making what you should have been making 4 years ago.
How about if we take a look at 2 years rather than 4?
Any discussion on the 2 years?
Also, we need, there's some folks that we need to hire now.
We'll just
Make
try.
that a special situation, and that's just a thought, just throwing it out there.
Can I speak to that, Mr. Knight?
Well, if you put it to the minimum, what you gonna do with the guy up the line that's not gonna get anything? You're gonna have to do it to that whole wad of people. It's a domino slippery slope deal, and we have wallered this thing around the best we could to be within some piece of money that we thought would be acceptable to the board.
Were all the positions treated exactly the same?
Yes, sir.
So there weren't any modifications made on any positions that were,
We did have some positions that were out of line, had been out of line, and so we did have to adjust some of those. There was about maybe 4.
so those were the flyers that were kind of stuck out?
Those are
Right.
the 4 that fly, and
Right.
perhaps those are the 4 positions. Perhaps it should be looked at as a step rather than looking at the whole roster on a 4-step.
Well, and they were just some that have been out of line for some time that needed to be caught up in line with the other people in the same position.
Mr. Johnson, did you have a question? Mr. Johnson, did you have a question?
I did, but I'm pondering.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll give you a minute to ponder. Does anyone else have a question, a criticism, or a suggestion?
This has already been taken into account and, into the budget with the 22,000 deficit, correct? Because of the,
No, it's not
Bill.
deficit, it's
not the
the gain.
deficit, but the gain.
Gain.
22.
Yes, sir, it has been.
The-
Thanks to Mr. Hilling.
Yeah, that's what I said, it's a gift from Bill. One thing I did want to say, you know, and when we started talking about this, there was one issue that was probably closer to me than it was anybody else, because we can't hire a front load driver. We can't hire, we've looked at Conway's hiring drivers. We asked the private industry what they're hiring drivers for. So we advertised the position at a higher rate to see if we could get some applications in. And even at the higher rate, we ain't got no position, no people that's qualified or experienced to do the job.
Was the rate equal to the,
No.
okay.
But my problem was when I asked Mr. Knight to allow us to at least try to get some applications in to see what the market was holding dollar-wise. I said, if we do this, I got 2 other drivers that's making less than what we're advertising this job for, and they've been here 5 years. So those have to be considered before we hire anybody, even if we get an application.
Well, you weren't here yesterday, everybody agreed with that. We
Yeah.
would never support an increase of the minimum and leave somebody that was below what the new minimum was.
Yeah, and I wasn't, and
Yeah.
that was a tough one for me. And I wasn't here yesterday, so.
Right. I would just like to say, I'm all in favor of the reorganization, because I think that's a wonderful utilization of resources. It's a restructuring and using what you got to be more efficient. Bill made the decision that he was retiring. The opportunity presented itself to do exactly what was done with the reorganization. Mr. Hughes, you know, was kind of hitting on what I was yesterday, and what normally we're familiar with in terms of a comp plan is that, you know, there are grades that positions are in. The grades are internal comparisons between jobs about what has more responsibility or authority with that job, and then there's a range associated with each one of those grades, and those ranges are shifted over time based on what the market needs to be and the cost of living and all, and a person, then there's a matrix involved with that about where the person feels fits within that range, and then that matrix determines what they're eligible for. The concern that I have is that this STEP program was approved by the board years ago. I don't remember 4 or 5, whenever it was, and it's in place. And to do anything different now would be a huge undertaking to try to change anything that's going on now. So it's confusing to me about the grades and the steps, but I've got a better grasp on it since yesterday, and I appreciate the time in trying to explain it. So I think that it's an opportunity based on a retirement of one of the division leaders, directors, that gives the opportunity to do something. So I think I understand better.
Who's next?
I'm sorry?
Who do we lose next? Next time we need to reorganize.
Well, I don't think you're gonna.
No, you don't.
I don't
No,
think you're
you
gonna
don't.
replace that position with the reorganization. So that's you know, resources that, you know, would be ongoing if Bill didn't retire. So that's the money that you know, has kind of been redistributed among the, as was mentioned yesterday, in a lot of cases with the rank and file, the largest percentage with the positions that are more entry level and that we're having a hard time filling. So I think that being said, I'm all that kind of getting to the point where I think I have a better understanding now, and with what's been presented, I think I will support, you know, what's being presented now, just having had that explained to me a little better, and it's not a perfect system, but in order to be fair to everybody and to be in the market with hiring and with taking into consideration the changes and reorganization, utilizing the resources that we have, I think, you know, I would support making the changes as presented.
Madam Chair, there was a motion on the floor. Has that motion died? Can I make a new motion, or where are we?
That, the motion has not died.
Okay.
And we're going to have a second to the, is there a second to the motion? Okay, it dies for lack of a second. So would you like to discuss something or
No, I'd like to make a motion that,
make another motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the staff recommendation and move forward with the plan that they have put together.
I second that.
Okay, we have a second to that motion. Is there any discussion? Okay, everybody in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Motion passes.
Thank you for your hard work, and Danny, it was a terrific strategy that you proposed. I'm fully in favor of it. I was looking at equity, but I can see that it's just difficult as all get out. You put a lot of time and energy into trying to see equity. No one was looking at trying to game this, but I appreciate all the work.
Thank you.
Well, let me tell you, I've learned over the years, and I've heard it so many times, you ought to run this place like a business. And it's hard to run a business like government runs with purchasing procedures and employee guidelines and everything that you have to follow, and the hoops you have to jump through, and the competition amongst government employees, and a lot of the government employees are gonna have to leave now because of the Terry program, and they're gonna be jumping into the private side. We've had some government employees jump into the private side when everything's great. And when it went busted, they didn't have a job, was wanting a job back in the code enforcement department mainly. But I think we run the Solid Waste Authority more like a business than any other waste people, garbage people, landfill people, because each of these budgets that Bill went through is a cost center. He knows what each one of those is costing, and Jan keeps up with it, and we come as close to it as we possibly can as a true enterprise fund. If it crosses the scale house is the cash register of this whole organization. Sometimes one department has to be helped along with the tipping fee, but most of them are standalone and work their own budget. Yes, sir.
I have another motion I'd like to make. Danny, I discussed with you and I discussed with Mike before the previous board meeting that we had the idea of a demonstration project to get restaurants to recycle. Mike was suggesting that we offer it as a grant program to see how we could do the recycling program before we would roll it out to offer it to others. And I was hoping that this budget, we could fund a demonstration project to encourage our restaurants.
We have the money budgeted for the grant program.
$152,000.
So that would take care
Yeah,
of that
that would-
program.
that would
That was
cover
for
that.
that.
Yes.
Outstanding then, thank you.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Danny just confirmed it's incorporated.
Oh, it's
So
already
it
in
was
the budget.
discussed with them, but not with the board and not with the other
Okay,
staff.
so we don't need a motion.
It will work through that budget. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very
Does,
much.
do
And
any of,
how much did you have?
$152,000.
do any of the other board members have any suggestions or instructions for staff in regards to the budget or anything else, any information they need, any instruction? Because
Get them prices up.
Oh, man. Tough right
we
now.
will probably be looking at, I know you're gonna do public input on our budget. And what is the next step, Jan, if you want to tell everybody?
We'll have a public hearing. I've got it scheduled, I think, for May. And so we'll probably leave it for May, and then at the May board meeting, we'll ask approval for the budget, and then we'll have a approved budget to start with July 1st.
Right, it does have to go to council?
They've already got the budget,
They already have
and
it?
as they approve their budget, our budget's also approved.
Yeah, our budget will also be approved, and if anyone wants to go to the council budget, it'll be on their website. It's next week for 2 days.
And
Is
we are
it-
not on their agenda.
We're not, is it going to be here at the administration building? Okay. Mr. Gosnell, is there any wisdom you would like to impart, criticism or otherwise? Thank you, sir.
Is there
We
a date for
appreciate
that
you
public
coming.
Hearing in May?
I'll have to check my calendar.
Okay.
I'll send
You'll
an
let us
email
know.
out. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Calendar? Yeah, like I said, I've got a calendar, but I'll send it out to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does the staff have anything else they would like to ask or suggest to the board?
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Commend,
For all the work.
Yes, okay, we will
commend you for your work.
Thank
take
you.
a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Everyone's adjourned. Thank everyone for being here.
Everybody.